food production progression over the past 10 years. Have you ever wondered why all Paraguayan records has to do with food? The largest barbecue, the longest hot dog, the largest biju, the largest salad. It's simple. Paraguay is basically a food producer. Always was and always will be. It is an important indicator of welfare and development. More than developing complex services, modern technology not applied to production, humans experts say that humans must deal with more food production, especially through agriculture. To achieve food security of a continuously growing world's population, food production should be increased between 70 to 100% by 2050. In fact, this is one of the goals of the millennium in the last summit of the UN Economical Social Council. In other words, each country must commit to produce 100% more food by 2050. What is the situation of Paraguay in this respect? Well, Paraguayan numbers continue to impress. Haiti produces only 1% more than 10 years ago. Bolivia produces 13% more. Amazing. Venezuela produces 8% more, which is expected. Cuba produces 70% less than a decade ago, which is very concerning. Argentina produces 25% more. Amazing numbers for Argentina. Chile produces 15% more. Colombia produces 2% more only. In Latin America, Brazil holds the record for being the second biggest increase in food production over the past 10 years in the last, years. Produces 31% more than 10 years ago. 31% more. That's amazing. But guess what? Which one is number one? Yes, you're right. Paraguay produces 50% more than 10 years ago. In other words, Paraguay met halfway the mark of the UN for the first 50 years of the 21st century only in 10 years. Needless to say that most of the countries of the world will probably not meet this goal, and even during the 21st century. Okay? Since they have no conditions for doing so. There is something important to say about this point. The human body consists of many types of biological molecules, but all their functions are led, executed, and regulated by proteins. So amino acids are needed to manufacture proteins. If only one of the 10 essential amino acids is not provided by the diet, human life just ends up in 76 days or so. It's very interesting to know that only two sources can provide all the amino acids at the same time. And they are proteins of animal origins, this is meat for example, meat, and soy. This is precisely what they are called premium protein sources. But when meat and soy are said, don't you remember something? Sounds like Paraguay, right? In other words, it's not the same to produce bananas and apples than producing meat and soy. Paraguay not only produces much but it produces much of what is really important. I have been hearing so many times that the Paraguayan economic growth is only because of soy and meat exportations. What do you mean by only? If people mean by that the fact that it is not a good idea to have all the eggs in the same basket, perhaps you're right. Otherwise, not right. The Paraguayan beef is of the highest quality. Paraguayan geneticists has been able to merge in the best way in a single animal the tender meat of English races with the hardiness and endurance of the Indian races, fully adapted to the climate of these latitudes. In previous years, Argentina provided Paraguay for genetic breeding sources, but today the roles were reversed. And it is Paraguay which is exporting to Argentina thousands of high genetic straws for artificial insemination for Brangus. There are 115,000 livestock producers in Paraguay, a country with only 6.5 million people. There are over 2 times more cattle than people in Paraguay. And this country has steadily gained the markets to all its neighbors, the world's traditional major exporters of meat. In the past 5 years, it almost doubled the value of foreign sales and gained access to more than 70 markets, according to official figures. And there is no doubt that we will recover all the markets by the end of this year. Okay, about the energy production, this is one of the biggest, of course, highlights in Paraguay development. Even though you might not believe it easily, 20% of the world's population has no electricity. 79 perhaps produce just the energy they need or import it somehow. The remaining 1%, I think it's less than 1%, but I put 1% because I need to show it to you, produces more energy than they need and export it. That's very uncommon. Paraguayans belong to that privileged 1% because of its 3 hydroelectric facilities producing a total of 55,000 gigawatts hour, while the requirements are only 4.4 thousand gigawatts hour. This is accounting for 12.5 times more than its requirements. So that means we produce 12.5 times more than we need, making us the second largest exporters of electricity, which is, by the way, the most usable form and clean form of energy. As if that was not enough, all the production is renewable, which means virtually inexhaustible. And not only that, it's clean, which is not contaminant. It is worth remembering that 90% of the energy that the world consumes not only is not renewable, because they burn wood, they burn coal, they use oil and derivatives, but inevitably pollute the planet, generating gases such as carbon dioxide, the famous CO2, which is responsible for the greenhouse effects, which is again responsible for the global warming, an issue that is certainly in the first place on the global agenda, rather than the world's hunger, diseases, the stock markets, terrorism, or any other important issue. Right? So global warming is in the first place of global concern. Paraguay is a country that produces more electricity per capita, while it is is amazing because not only can produce a lot of electricity per capita, but also is in the list of the least consumers of electricity per capita. Isn't that the definition what is wealth? So that you produce a lot, but you use very few. About 2.6 7 billion inhabitants uh, of the earth must get their energy by, the energy they need by burning wood, by using charcoal or dung for living. It is almost comical to read in the press articles like China, the world leader in renewable energy, just because it's the country that has invested the more in recent years in the conversion of its energy sources. But they don't mention that they are at the top of the list in the generation of greenhouse gases together with the states. It's so comical. They don't say that the fact that they still get 75% of its electricity by burning coal will, and China will remain doing so because there is no way they can change so rapidly, right? So almost all countries except for Paraguay, maybe Canada and Iceland, are very concerned about the conversion of its energy sources, because in these 2-3 countries like Paraguay, Iceland, and Canada, very uncommon situation takes place. This is abundant renewable energy sources, and at the same time very low population. Amount of carbon dioxide released to atmosphere per capita. In early 2011, the Chinese government had the idea to organize a meeting with representatives of civil associations or academic technicians from Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, Dominican Republic, Peru, Uruguay, Chile, Cuba, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Bolivia, and most of the Latin American countries, to participate for 2 weeks as guests of the Chinese government in a seminar to learn about Chinese technologies against climate change and reducing carbon dioxide emissions. We had no idea that any representative of Paraguay was invited to such meeting. The reason is simple and can be interpreted in the following lines. Basically, and to save words and time, we can say that humanity is facing the biggest challenge in its history. This is to get energy as renewable as possible, as clean as possible, with the lowest release of carbon dioxide, or life on planet Earth will become completely unsustainable before the end of this century. Major climate changes, millions of deaths, catastrophic economic damages. If humans continue acquiring the energy they need by burning fossil fuels, all the data is consistent and predictions are very disturbing. Most of the scientists say that by the year 2030, the Arctic ice cap will be completely melted, and the North Pole will be just another point in the ocean. So, on one hand, the richest countries, in terms of money, are concerned about emitting less carbon dioxide without costing them their lifestyle or their markets. On the other hand, non-developed nations are concerned about growing in a sustainable way. This is by using only renewable sources. A difficult task for those who do not have many natural resources, or money to invest in expensive system. Developed countries are actually more concerned about preserving, conducting, and funding the development of renewable sources in emerging countries than trying to redesign their own. In which of the two groups do you think is Paraguay? Well, Paraguay is definitely not in any of these two groups. Actually, you will discover that 3 countries are alone in this list, in the third list. This is countries that produce much more energy than and clean energy than its requirements, while emitting only almost nothing of greenhouse gases. These 3 countries are Paraguay, Paraguay, and Paraguay. Well, Canada and Iceland maybe are kind of close, but never like Paraguay. Pay attention to the following data and analysis so that you will understand this point. Well, you should know that the world average in terms of carbon dioxide emissions, this is tons per inhabitant per year, is 4.8. That means that in average, every citizen of this planet releases 4.8 tons per year of carbon dioxide. In Japan, every inhabitant releases almost double that number, 9.9 tons per year. In China, it's 5. In USA, every American releases 21 tons per year. That's a lot. That's 4 times the world average. Some regions of Spain, like Asturias, for example, releases 27 tons per year. Every citizen of northern Spain. Talking of which, northern Spain, Andorra is 6. But look, Andorra is a country that lives from the tourism activity. Every Australian releases 18 tons per year. Every South Korean releases 11 tons per year. Every person living in Trinidad and Tobago releases 27 again. That's a lot for a touristic spot. Then we have every citizen of Luxembourg, again in the same category, releases 23 tons per year. And remember who was the one who grew the most in 2010? Remember? What about that? Well, shame of you guys, because Paraguayans only release this. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing how Paraguay can be growing this fast and releasing that amount of carbon dioxide? Not only that, we reduced the amount of carbon dioxide. It was 0.9 5 years ago. Can you believe it? That means that every Japanese releases 16.5 times more than we do. Every Australian releases 30 times more. Every American, 35 times more. Every citizen of northern Spain, 45 times more than we do. It's amazing. Every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, 45 times more. Every citizens of Qatar releases 92 times more than we do. Oh my God. And what about our region? Look, remember the world average was 4.8, Chinese 5. Well, Argentina is 4.6, while Brazil is 2. Bolivia is 1.6. Remember the hypothesis? One more time. Chile is 4.3. Cuba is 2.5. Remember who was the one who decreased its production of food by 17% in 10 years? Well, that was Cuba. And Paraguay is 0.6. That means that Paraguayans emit 3 times less than Brazilians. Amazing. Means also that Paraguayans emit less than half of what Bolivians emit. It means that Paraguayans almost emit 8 times less than Argentinians and 7 times less than Chileans. Isn't Paraguay amazing?